Hi guys, welcome to my channel. In this video, let's understand what is the structural representation of FA. In my previous video, I already explained the central concepts of automata theory and some problems. Now let's understand what is the structural representation of FA. So before going into the concept, so you have to understand some basics. What are they? Let's understand that. State. What is a state? Circle with state name. Here, Q node is a state name. So let it be Q node is some state name. So to represent the state, we have to denote it with a circle. Inside the circle, we have to represent it that with the state name in this way. Okay, I think you understood. So we have to represent the state name with the circle. So in this way, we'll be representing the state. Okay, now how to represent the initial state? How we can understand this is the initial part of the state. So state with an edge from no source means what? So this is nothing but the state with the circle and the state name. So to identify the particular state as the initial state, we have to represent with an arrow. So this arrow is coming from no source. Okay. To say more simply, this arrow is coming from nowhere. Means some initial state it is coming from nowhere, it is coming in that way. So we have to represent the initial state with an arrow with no source and with the state inside the state name. So how to represent the transition state? So transition state is nothing but which directed edge is a transition. Suppose this is one state and this is another state. Q node is a one state and Q2 is a another state. To represent these two states with some relation, we have to represent with the transition arrow. So this is the arrow means what? So the Q node is going towards Q1. So Q node state is going towards the Q1. To represent in that way, we have to represent with the arrow. So this is known as a transition state. It is transition from Q node to Q1 in that way. What is the final state? So final state is nothing but a double circle with a state name. So normally to represent the state will be representing with the single circle. To represent the final state, we have to represent with the double circle in this way. Okay, now so these are the four things which you have to keep in the mind before going into the concept. State, initial state, transition state and the final state. How to represent it? Okay. Finite automata has only one initial state. So the finite automata will be having the only one initial state. It will be starting from only the single point and one or more multiple final states. It can have more than one final states. It can be, but initial state will be only one. It should start with only one point, but it can end up with the multiple points. Okay, simply. Finite automata represent using directed graph or transition table. What is a directed graph? What is a transition table? I will be explaining you, don't worry. So first understand these four things which how to identify. Okay, what is the state? What is the initial state? What is the transition state? What is the final state? Okay, now let's understand. A finite automata can be represented structurally as a directed graph, also called as state transition diagram or state machine diagram. Means what is a directed graph? Already you have seen here directed. So this Q node is directing towards Q1. We have some direction. So this is nothing but a directed graph simply. So finite automata will be representing as how will be representing this FA means finite automata. It is a represented as like a directed graph. You know what is a directed graph? Which will be showing some directions to where we have to go. Which point to which point we have to go, which will be showing some directions. So this is known as the state transition diagram or the state machine diagram. So the graph consists of vertices, which is node and edges. So in an FA, the vertices represented the state of the machine. Means what? So you all know what is the state. So this is nothing but some state. So this state is represented as vertices. So you all know what is the vertices and what is the edge. So this is the vertices. The state which is representing in the finite automata is nothing but edge. vertices, and the relation between these two nodes, or we can say vertices, or we can say state, is nothing but the edge or transition, direction, an arrow. Okay, we have many names. Okay, now the edge representing the transition between the state based on the input symbol. Okay, so these states, which is Q0 and Q1, is nothing but the vertices. So this vertices is represented as the states, and the relation between these two states, how will be representing with an arrow? This is known as the transition, or we can say the edge between the two vertices. To say more simply, the edge between the two vertices. Okay, now you understood. Now the FA has one initial state, which I said before only. It will be starting with one point but ended up with a multiple points, representing by the arrow pointing to the state. So it will be pointing from one state to another state, means what, from one state to it is going to another state. So the initial state is where the machine begins processing input symbol. So what is the initial state? Initial state means what? From where it will be starting, the initial point where it will be starting, okay, when it begins the processing the input symbols. Okay, the machine may have one or more accepting states indicated by the double circle around the state. So what is this accepting states? Accepting state means nothing but the machine which accepts the input string. Okay, the edge of the graph represents the transition between the states. Each edge is labeled with the input symbol, so from where to where it should go, indicating the symbol that causes the machine to transition from one state to another. Okay, now okay, and this DFA and NFA, when you go further you can understand about this DFA and NFA. Now only if I will explain you will get confused. So as of now, understand this thing. If you understand this diagram, it's very important. It's very important diagram. So it's a basic diagram, and you should understand here only, at this stage only. So if you will not understand at this stage, you cannot go further. So I think you understood this thing. If you are not understanding till here, start from starting of my video and repeat it again and again and watch till you understand. Okay, because from now, if you understand the previous topics only, you can understand upcoming topics. So please watch again and again if you will not understand. Okay, from here it will be very tough to understand if you will not understand the previous topics. Okay, yeah. Now let's see. Finite automata represented in three ways. What are that? So transition diagram, transition table, and instantaneous description. So we have another name for transition diagram is state diagram. Okay, yeah, which I already said before only. The finite automata is represented in three ways, which is transition diagram, transition table, and instantaneous description. So what is the transition diagram? So other name of transition diagram is state diagram. So what is the state diagram? Let's understand. Can also be called a transition diagram, or we can say transition system. So it is a direct labeled graph in which nodes are corresponding to the states. Means what? And edge is corresponding to the transition state. You all know the state is nothing but we can see it as a node or the edge. Similarly, the transition state is nothing but the edge. Yeah. Let's understand one diagram so that you can understand what is the clear picture of the state diagram. Yeah. So consider this is the graph. So this P node, or we can say the P vertices, is nothing but the initial state. Why? Because it is having one arrow which is coming from nowhere. The arrow which is coming from nowhere pointing to the node which is P. Okay. And this R node is nothing but the final state. Why? Because it is surrounded with two circles. Okay. Now if you see from P to R, from initial state to the final state, we have some transition arrow which is nothing but B. So from B to R, we have one transition arrow or transition directed to the arrow, which is R, which is state B. Okay, similarly from Q to Q, which is a self loop, we have A, and Q to R, we have B. Similarly from self loop R to R, we have A, and even R to R, we have B. So this is a simple diagram of the state diagram. Okay, it's a simple diagram so that you can understand. So yeah. Now let's understand what is a transition table. So transition table is nothing but the rows are corresponding to the states. Rows which are there, like table means we'll be having, it's a combination of rows and columns. Yes or no? So rows are nothing but the states and the columns are nothing but the input. Okay. For each combination of the present state which is there and the present input, corresponding to the entry specifies the next state of the system. If you see here, so this P is a current state, or we can say the input. So the input which is coming towards, and this is a current state. This will be specifying to the next state or next state of the system. So this is the P is a current state and which will be specifying to the other state or the next state. Okay. Yeah. So if you see this diagram, so these A, B, B, A is the input tape. Let it be input tape, and this is the finite state control. Okay, so this is the finite state control. What will be there in this finite state control? We'll be having some operations of automata. Yes or no? So from this finite control, we'll be having some read-only head towards to this input tape. So this is the block diagram of finite automata. So basically the block diagram of this finite automata consists of three major components, that are input tape and read-only head and the finite control. So the input tape consists of set of cells, each holds one input symbol. Means what? This is the input tape which is divided into some square boxes, and each square consists of the single symbol. So if you consider this is one square box, it is having some symbol. Similarly, here we have some symbol, here we have some symbol. So each block, like each square is divided into some mini squares, and each square is consists of some symbols, single symbol. In the one square box, we have only one single symbol, and n squares of each tape contains n markers of left hand and right hand. Means what? So here the left hand and the right hand is nothing but this A and this A. Okay, the right side end is A and this left side A is here A. So this A and this A is nothing but the markers. Okay, markers is nothing but the left side end and the right side end simply. Okay, so what is the benefit of this markers means? So absence of this n markers. So if this n markers are not there for the left side and the right side, then what it will be indicates? So it will indicates like tape is infinite length. Means here if this markers is there here, this end and this end, we can stop at this point and this point. If this 2 points like this markers is not there, so it will be having some infinite length which we cannot stop. So to stop this length, we have to indicate the left side and right side end with the marker. So this is about the input tape. Now let's understand what is the read-only head. Moves left to right and scan one symbol at a time. Means what? So this read-only head means it will be moving from left to right. From left to right it will be moving. When it is moving from left to right, it will be scanning each and every square box which is there in the symbol. So this reading head will be examining only one square which is having only one symbol at a time. At one time it will be examining only one symbol. Okay, and can move one square till it reaches the end of the string. So it will be going one after the other. So once it will go for one block which is symbol A, again after completion of examination of this thing, it will goes to next square block which is B. So on it goes to the end of the string. So this is nothing but the read-only head. Now let's understand what is the finite control or the finite state control. So finite control determines the next state of the system. So what is the next state? So what is, we have current state and the next state. So what is the next state of the system? Using the symbol under the read-only head and the present state of the symbol. So means what? Means it will be deciding which input symbol is read and next. So we have read-only head, means after one after other it will goes to the next state. So in this finite control, it will be reading what will be the next state, what will be the next thing it will be reading, where to move, either to the left or the right. It will be controlled by the finite control. It will be controlling from where to where it should go. So these are the three things which are there in this. So in this way, we will be representing the transition table. If you see this diagram, which I already explained in before states. So we have three states, which is P, Q, R. So this P, Q and R are the three states which are there in this. So we have two things, transition states, which is A and B. So from P to, if you see here, from P to R, we'll be having B. So when we'll have the B state, when it reaches from P state to R state, then we'll be getting B. So that they are saying from when we go from P state to R state, we'll get the result is B. Similarly, when we go from P state to Q state, we'll get the A. Similarly, when we go from Q state to again Q state, then we'll get A. Q state to Q state, then we'll get A. When we go from Q state to R state, then we'll get result is B. Similarly, R to R is A and R to R is B. So in this way, we'll be representing in the rows and columns. So this is nothing but the transition table and this is nothing but the diagram, which is transition diagram. In this way, we'll be representing the diagram and in this way, we'll be representing the table. And that's it for this video, and in my next video I will be explaining you how we can solve the problems with this 5 elements. So yeah, I think you understood this video. If you not understand, watch from beginning, and if you have still any doubts, please mention in the comment section. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Let's meet in the next video.